other studies might take us, but this is something that I thought was imperative as we move on from the story of David. We got to about verse 37 last night when we were in chapter 17. But I want to talk about something that was mentioned in chapter 15 and 16. To really get the most context out of this, it would be to read the whole chapter, but I'm going to sum it up a little bit. Basically, what happens is Saul is tasked with defeating the Amalekites by the Lord. And Samuel is talking to Saul about this, and Saul does it, but what happens instead? Does he destroy all of the Amalekites? Does he defeat all the men and women and children and oxen and sheep and everything like that? Mostly, but not totally. And what ends up happening is he keeps some of the spoils for himself. And this angers the Lord. And Saul being king at this point, basically God is saying that I've repented of making Saul king. You know, he displeases me for doing this act. And as we go to the end of chapter 15, what ends up happening, let me find it here. Saul basically makes up an excuse in verse 22, saying that I kept, some of these offerings so that they could be offered to God. That's what I was really doing. I wasn't keeping spoils for myself, but I wanted to make offerings to God. And Samuel says, hath the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than to sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, he hath also rejected thee from being king. And so it's really at this point, Saul's not king. He's king in name. He's king from what the Israelites understand, but God doesn't see him as a king anymore. What is significant about this is that later on in verse 27, and as Samuel turned about to go away, Saul lays his hold upon the skirt of his mantle. He yanks at it and ends up ripping it. And basically Samuel says, you strip my skirt, your royalty will be stripped from you. You're not going to have it anymore. Someone else is going to be found king in the eyes of the Lord. We fast forward to chapter 16, and it comes to pass that the Lord talks with Samuel and says, there is going to be another that I want to choose. And we go into verse 7. It says, but the Lord said unto Samuel, look not on this countenance, or his countenance, or on the height of his stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord seeth not as man seeth, for man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. So that's kind of a foreshadowing of what we're going to be talking about a little bit. David ends up being king of Israel, but it's not what anybody else would have thought, right? It's something that we see him small in stature, he's ruddy, he's a cute little kid, as we'd like to say. But he's going to be the king. And if we go on to verse 13, Jesse, he's kind of showing off his sons. And Samuel is kind of going past his sons. He's got 8 of them. And it's kind of from the oldest to the youngest. And Samuel's like, nope, not him. Nope, not him. Next. Nope, not him. He's like, basically, don't you have another boy? Jesse's like, yeah, I got this kid in the back. He's a sheep watcher. We don't really talk about him much. But, yeah, his name's David. And Samuel says, let me see. And so, in verse Samuel 16, verse 11, Samuel said unto Jesse, Are here all thy children? And he said, There remaineth yet the youngest, and behold, he keepeth the sheep. And Samuel said unto Jesse, Send and fetch him, for we will not sit down till he come hither. And he sent and brought him. Now he was ruddy, and withal of a beautiful countenance, and goodly to look to. Kind of like me. Just kidding. And the Lord said, Arise, anoint him, for this is he. And then Samuel took the horn of oil, and anointed him in the midst of his brethren, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. So Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. I think it was this point that David knew this as well. The Lord is with me. I have the Lord on my side. And from that day forward, David had no fear in his life. Now, I don't know a whole lot about David before this. We talked last night about David doing his job. And he was very good at it. He put his heart and his soul into his job. And this is something we can all take lesson from, but this is a significant turning point for David, to have the Lord on his side. And as we continue on tonight, talking about his great feat, that he is able to conquer the giant, both physically and metaphorically, he is able to do so with the Lord. And he has that faith and that trust, and he knows that the Lord is on his side. So much so, he's not scared. He looks at this task as, I have a job to do. And really, this should have been done earlier. You guys should have taken care of this. So does anybody have any questions or comments before we get started on the great story we're getting ready to talk about? I just thought that was a really interesting point for David to have kind of been selected at that point as to be the king. And Saul did love David at this point. He was his musician, I believe, if we read on, that he would play the harp. And there was a point in which I believe in chapter 16 at the end, Saul was vexed with the spirit. And then when David played the harp, the spirit was released from him. But I'd have to do some more study on that. But anyways, let's continue on. We left off on verse, I want to say 37, Samuel chapter 17, 1 Samuel chapter 17. So if someone could, let me get my notes up here. Can someone go ahead and read verse 37 and 38 of 1 Samuel 17, please?
David said, Moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, Go, the Lord be with thee. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put a helmet of brass upon his head. Also he armed him with a coat of mail.
Thank you, Dudley. Can you go ahead and hit 39 as well, please?
David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off him.
Thank you very much. This is a situation that David gets into. He knows what his job is. He knows what his task is. He's not shying away from it by any means. But it is at this point Saul gives David his own armor and a coat of mail. Now David, he's a pretty small fella, and Saul was considered great of stature. I don't know about you, but if I was to wear some kind of armor, I would like it fitted first. I would like it to be to my size. If I was to put on Adam's clothes, they probably wouldn't fit very well because he's a lot larger than I am, a Goliath type person. No, just kidding. But it's not going to fit right. And not only that, David hasn't proved it. David hasn't tested this. He hasn't worked in it. He doesn't know it. He said, I can't go in this. Thanks for the offer, but I this armor. And in verse 39, David was also given a sword with the armor, and David examined the armor, and it came to the conclusion that it is not proven, neither the sword nor the armor. And David tells Saul, this isn't going to work. I have not tested my abilities with this armor. So then David took it off. How can this principle be applied today, do you think? Do we have things in our lives that are proven or not proven? Well, of course. While that word proven can mean tested, we are not to test God. We are not to test God's loyalty. We are not to test God's knowledge. But we can show others that the Bible is proven. It is true, and it is accurate. It is sharper than any two-edged sword, rightly dividing the word of truth. We can show that to people. We can prove that we are Christians serving the Lord in our best capacity. We can show that we love God. And I think these are ways that we can show others that, I know what the Bible says, and I know it's true, and I know it's accurate, and I'll show you. And I want to show you what this means to me in my life and what it can mean in yours. So, does anybody have any comments or questions on that, of things that you would consider proven or not proven? Go ahead, Ron.
An easy example I can think of is, in our world, there's probably one of the big giants that we have is, paying our bills.
Sure.
And a lot of people might say, well, try this or try this. This will work and this will work out. This is all, we've invested in this. We know who we can trust in. It's not this gimmick or that whatever. We can trust in God. If we do what He has said, He will provide for us.
Yeah. That which moth and rust corrupts on this earth, God lasts forever. The kingdom of God will last forever. Go ahead, Ron.
Many examples. Thinking in your line of work, why do you work on the school buses?
To show my skills, I suppose, and try to keep the kids safe.
Trying to keep the kids safe. You don't want to put somebody in a bus where it could be unsafe. Same principle with those that drive the buses.
Yeah.
Same thing goes for getting driver's license. To be proven before you can obtain certain privileges. We do it all the time in the Lord's body. Who do we have teach classes? Are those folks untested?
As we should. Speaking of tools, there are many different tools for many different jobs. Tools used incorrectly is not good quality. And not fixed and not appropriate fixed. You may have a special tool in your toolbox this word of God, the Bible, that is true, and it's proven true time and time again. God does not lie, He cannot lie, and we can't overcome the wiles of the temporary things, and not full. Very good practice. Anybody else? Now things are starting to get exciting. Verse 40. Go ahead and read that. Yes. Sorry, I'm the second step. Yeah, it is. Yes, sir. And that's a great point. Thank you, Kyle, for reading that. This verse 40 says, He took his staff in his hand and shows him 5 smooth stones out of the brook. First of all, he's a shepherd. Shepherds keen with the staff. He knows how to use it. He knows how to gather sheep with it. He knows how to fend off some beasts with it, too. Do I know that? We talked about it yesterday. Fended off a bear and a lion. That's a tough little kid to be able to do that. We talked about this 100 men versus 1 gorilla type situation. There's no way that 1 man versus 1 bear or 1 man versus 1, lion is going to do that. No way. But he has the Lord. He has proven and tested these things in which he's used before. And this brook, he knew where to find these stones. He knew where to find these smooth stones. He took 5 of them in his sling. And what's really cool, Trent Garrison, he made this sling. This is real. It's got 2 little finger holes here. And I'm probably not doing it correctly, but you take the 2 finger holes there, and then hold it like that, and you got your stone. Now, I think he was telling me this is a longer stone. David probably would have had a shorter one. The shorter one is much more accurate, but it won't go as far. And I think Trent said he slung one of these and it went 270 yards. Something like that. That's a bull. Okay? That's something that's pretty intense. I'm not, sling this thing around. That's going to hit somebody. Including myself. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool. But that's a projectile weapon. That's going to do some damage. So these are the things that in verse 40 David has proven. He has tested these things. He took 5 stones, put them in a scrip, which is his bag, and then he has a staff with him. And then what does he do next? What's the last part of that verse 40 that he does? He drew It is at this point that David is ready and sure for the challenge to come. As Christians, before we get too far, I want to ask this question. Can we feel this way today as Christians? Of course. You know, we talk about David later on saying that my staff and my rod did comfort me. Well, the Bible tells us, I know that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. With this, I can overcome. Yesterday we talked about, I want to say 1 Corinthians 10, 13. Talking about temptation. Any man can overcome temptation. God does not put temptation on you that you cannot handle. Man can always overcome temptation. We're all tempted as a consequence of James 1. No, people first. Get under temptation. But be stressed. Conquer it. Be tempted. All of us are tempted. All of us have giants in our lives. And we have the ability, we have the sling and the stone to conquer. That's the word. So let's move on. Unless anybody has any comments. Tina? Yes. That's awesome. Yeah, more aerodynamic. That's, I've watched some YouTube videos. Well, watching on how these guys use different sleep cups. I saw one fellow, he had like a cardboard piece of sheet metal with behind it. He does this spin around the whole thing and smacks it and it right from the heart. Oh man, that's bad news for the Bible. Verse 41, I'll go ahead and read that. It says, And the Philistine came on and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. So Goliath even had, from what I understand, he had this guy carrying his shield before him. And he was kind of like his right-hand guy. Goliath's probably tired. He's been walking around for 40 days talking to these people like, you guys are peons, your God is trash. He's just smack talking for 40 days. That's a long time to do a lot of smack talking. And he's just walking around, he's got his little sidekick guy with the shield, and he's getting ready to go face who he needs to face. Well, David's coming for you. He's walking to him. And I don't think Goliath's a hard guy to spot. So, David's alright, I'm thinking Goliath, he's not even thinking about who David is, where he's from, where he is. He's not going to look for a little kid. Not an army. Verse 42. When the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, and ruddy and of fair countenance. So he sees a kid with reddish complexion. It is at this moment that the Philistine completely and utterly underestimates him. And I think about that when we look back at that chapter 16 in 1 Samuel. Samuel said, I think it was the Lord, he's not looking for someone of high stature. You know, we see with our eyes somebody that's going to be strong and big and wants to go up against Goliath and actually have some sort of challenge. It's not the way that God views things. There's a lot of things that we want to make sense of in our minds. We want to see things for face value. But God puts us in our place in those things. When we sing that song, the highest high you'll ever find is when you feel a lot of different opposite things. And with the human mind, the highest place we'll ever go is the top of the mountain. That's when you kneel to pray. And then you can be by yourself. It's just amazing. We think in these things and we try to make sense. So here, Goliath's totally thinking that, man, this kid, this cute little kid, this ruddy, fair-complected kid, what's he gonna do? Sing me a song? It's just amazing. So before we get into some speeches that these two men are going to make, does anybody have any comments or questions to this speech? Okay. Looking at the lesson notes, the spear itself, the head of it weighed about 18 pounds. It looks like someone's getting ready to fight us. Little kid, maybe it's David. Anyway, but the head of this spear is about 18 pounds, just the head of this thing. And we're not talking about the whole pretty weighty situation. And then the breastplate of scales on Goliath weighed about 157 pounds. I would imagine that's more than the weight of David himself. Just significant things, and it takes a separate guy. Now I know Goliath could carry the shield, no doubt, but walking around taunting the Israelites for 40 days, carrying 157-pound armor. It's going to take some weight. You're coming at me with a staff, like I'm a dog. What are you gonna do with that? And it wasn't even like a laughing matter for Goliath. He was upset. He was actually thinking, this is ridiculous. And you're gonna send this little kid. And maybe he had, well, he didn't. I'm just thinking that there's a little bit of pity in Goliath, but there wasn't. But anyways, you're thinking, why on earth would this be my challenger? And we're getting ready to finish on Goliath's last words, because I believe in verse 44, that's the last time that Goliath speaks. He says, "Come on then, I will feed your flesh to the animals," basically. Verse 44. We'll go ahead and read 43. And the Philistine said unto David, so I called this Goliath's speech, his last speech. Am I a dog that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. sure now too. He's saying, all right, I've had enough of this garbage. I'm going to deliver you to the beasts of the field and to the fowls of the air. I'm done. Let's go. And David has a rebuttal to this. And I think it's just awesome. Can someone read verses 45 through 47, please? This would be David's speech. That's not a mic drop. I don't know what is. Right? 5 minutes. He's basically saying, you may have a sword, spear, and a shield, but I come to you in the name of the Lord. That's all he means. And he says, because of that, the God of Israel, you have defied him for the last time. This is the last thing that Goliath ever says that we have recorded in the Bible. That you will be fed to the fowls of the air and the beasts of the field. That's the last time he gets to speak. And then today the Lord will give you to me in battle, David says. I'm going to hit you and take your head off. That's so like saying John Wayne movie, that's bold talk from when I'm Batman. You guys ever seen that? It's a good show. Anyways, he's serious. He says, I'm gonna hit you and I'm gonna take your head off. I'm not walking away from this. The animals of the field and the air, birds of the air, they're gonna eat your head. They're gonna eat you, not me. You're gonna be food. And everyone will know that there is a God in Israel. Everyone here will know that the Lord won't save with a sword or a spear, for this is the Lord's battle, and he will deliver you into our hands. So he basically takes Goliath's little speech, turns it back on him, and says, no, you're the one. Or he doesn't even call him Goliath, he's a Philistine, uncircumcised Philistine. He's not giving him the luxury of having him. Probably does view Goliath as a dog. You're not. You're gonna die. So you're the one who I'm going to defeat. You have defied my God. You have defied the Lord. This is the last time you will breathe. You're going to go down. He doesn't say how. He's not going to say how he's going to do this. We'll find out how. But I wonder what Goliath's thought process was at this point. Hearing that rebuttal from David. What do you guys think? Got a mission. As we talked about yesterday, Russ did an excellent job of kind of setting the stage for this event. David saw this as a task to do. It wasn't oh, do I have to? He was more annoyed that it wasn't done yet. Why is this guy still walking around? Why isn't he dead? heard some say, well, David was in it for the prize. He asked about it. He said, what's the prize that I get for killing this guy? And the other, oh, well, if you want to know, they tell him. David's like, all right, I'll do it. Saul's like, I don't want to spoil it before our break. What do we got here? Go ahead, Chris. It didn't matter if Goliath was a 9-foot tall giant or a 5-foot tall ninja. Doesn't matter. We'll move on and have some snacks. Hopefully you guys don't fall asleep on the next part. Pretty excited. Thank you.
Casey, you gotta get my wife a call. You can have her. You can have her.
Can you hear me now? Good. Is that an old joke now? Can you hear me now?
Verizon.
Was that? It was Sprint, wasn't it?
Verizon. It's Verizon.
Verizon.
He actually works for a different.
Right, because he switched, right?
He did.
What a
He did,
traitor.
but yeah.
Man.
Hey,
Yeah, hey, it's all where the money goes. Yeah. So is it what, T-Mobile? Is he T-Mobile now? Or AT&T? Yeah. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and continue on with the David and Goliath saga. It's turning out to be a pretty good story, I think. Picking up in verse 47, David finishes his speech and his rebuttal to Goliath, saying, "And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with the sword and spear, for the battle is on the Lord's, or for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands." So he's taken what Goliath has said, and he's basically saying, no, you're not feeding me to anybody. I'm going to make sure that you are delivered to me, and the Lord is going to deliver you into our hands. He's basically saying,
yeah,
go ahead.
just like Russ said too, or maybe another thing about it's the host. It's
Yeah,
like your whole army, basically.
yeah,
You're talking about me as an individual. I'm going to deliver your entire army.
right. And he's got this planned out. David's already got this whole thing planned out. I wanted to make this comment just to preface. I do not have any truth behind what I'm about to say, so don't take it to the bank, if you will. You can't cash this check. But I have heard a theory, and I thought it was interesting. Maybe some of you have heard it as well. Does anybody have any idea of why might David have picked 5 stones?
I know what Jim McConnell
Okay,
said.
there's a family insurance plan, right? Yeah. Goliath is, from what I understand, has 4 other brothers, and they're big boys too. As a matter of fact, I think Goliath is the youngest. And what's also interesting is this family line. They're an interesting bunch. They got 6 fingers and 6 toes. You can find that, earlier in the scriptures. But yeah, that theory I thought was really interesting. That David wasn't just going for Goliath, and like you said, the Lord of hosts, he's going to take them all. He's going to wipe out the whole lineage. And I did do a little bit of research. One of Goliath's brothers, I think his name is Lami, Lahmi, and that is talked about in Chronicles. He was slain by a different individual. But anyways, that's free. I don't have any biblical backing behind that. I just thought it was interesting. Sounds like Jim O'Connor had that.
Yeah, I've heard him say that.
Okay, that's pretty neat. I'd like to think that's the case.
It's pretty much the theory of it.
Yeah. I just think it's interesting. Go ahead.
One thing that I find interesting is how going back to what David said in his life, in verse 46 it says that all the earth may know there is a God in Israel. Thinking about David was, yes, he did his deed, he did his job, he gave the word of God. In Matthew 5:16 it says, "For us to let our light shine, so that when God might be glorified." It's just interesting to see that kind of play out. You can see another example of Daniel they did what God had said to do, and what was told them God got praised. For us today, we're supposed to do what God is supposed to do the deed. Not to glorify ourselves, but to glorify.
Right. And we talked about how David's his staff and his sling, those things were proven. Those things were known to be true. And what is the word of the Lord? It's true. It's proven. Everything that the Lord speaks, the other night we had a devotional talking about how pure are the words of the Lord. Like silver tested 7 times. Or tried in a fire 7 times and reforged. Silver only needs to be purified twice in order to be considered pure silver. But 7 times? That's amazing. And for the words of the Lord to be that pure and that true and that accurate, that's amazing. That's something that you can, quote unquote, take to the bank. It's true. So, yeah, David here, he gives his rebuttal to Goliath, and now it's about to go down. Verse 50. Go ahead. Sure. Oh, okay. You're already in trouble, Russ. I meant to do a little bit more study on, I was talking to Nathaniel last night about what did this scene actually look like? What was the ranks that the Philistines had or that the Israelites had against each other? It kind of seemed like the Israelites already accepted defeat at this point. They got this champion Goliath, or this uncircumcised Philistine. Nobody's going to go up against him. They were all talking to each other. No one's going to challenge this guy. And, David comes along and said, I'll do it. Go ahead.
I was thinking about this
wonderful observation. Yeah, we see that a lot in the Old Testament, 40 days or 40 nights, things like this. What's that? Jesus. Jesus was in the wilderness. Not that I can. 40 years. Yeah, it's there's a lot of numbers in the Bible that play a huge significance. The number 7 signifies completeness or the perfect number, whereas 6 is the incomplete number, which would signify evil or something of that nature. And then 40, that's a very good observation. Turning points after 40 of something, 40 years, 40 nights, 40 days, things like that. Incomplete, yeah. And, when you read Revelation and things like that, you start to figure out where some of these numbers mean. And, okay, moving on. Go ahead.
If we go back to verse 37, when we was talking about David said, moreover, they said, paw the lion, paw the bear. Basically, I'm going to destroy him just like I did this.
Yeah.
And then you see here where when he's talking to Goliath, and he basically repeats that.
Yeah.
It just makes me think of, this is a great opportunity to examine yourself.
Sure.
He had that faith in God. And we truly have that faith in God for ourselves. Because if we did, there's a lot of things we would wonder. There's a lot of things we would, try to get around or whatever. How am I going to figure this out? It's like, no, I'm going to take out Goliath. And then if the family thing is true, I've got a couple more stones for them. And I'm just going to continue because I know God's with me.
Yeah.
And just think of that mentality of how have that peace of mind, knowing it doesn't matter that he had, it doesn't matter what happens, God's with me. It just makes you wonder if we truly have that. And it's a self-examine thing, but we truly believe that.
Yeah.
Or we're like, yeah, I know I believe in God, but I also think I have to, figure things out myself. No, you really don't. But you
Yeah.
do have to have that faith in God and use it as well.
Awesome point, and real quick, that's a wonderful point because David's not thinking of, can I do this? He's thinking of the next thing to do. Yeah, he's like, what's my next objective? And I'm going to complete this task, what's next? Go ahead. Right. Yeah. He was sure, and he, as speaking to Goliath, actually spoke truth. Everything he said to Goliath was true, and it was almost in a way prophesied. Yeah, I'm going to take your head, and it's going to come off your body, and the Lord will deliver all of you. And that's a fact. And, right. You think Goliath was scared at any point? Just ask. Yeah. Too arrogant.
Maybe when Dave started moving towards the baby.
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. He's too arrogant, too prideful, and that's the ultimate downfall, isn't it? So you could think of it that way as a metaphorical view of the giant being slayed. Pride ends up in the fall. Maybe. Okay, so we ended off in verse 47. That's the end of David's speech. Verse 48 is where things start to get real here. And it came to pass, when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, listen to this, that David hasted and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. He is going in full throttle. And he's like, I'm not stopping. I got a job to do, and I'm going to knock this dude's lights out. Literally. And he's going not just toward the Philistine Goliath, he's going towards their army. He is walking in. With who? Nobody. Him and God. Him and the Lord. Verse 50. Or no, verse 49. Yes. Right.
Hey, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah. There's none of this shaking business.
Straight ahead, and it just kind of makes you think again when you're looking at lessons, Dave. You think of this: is how many times do we run away from our problems? How many times do we run away from addressing something that we know we need to address?
Yeah.
It's an example. Nope, I got God with me. I'm moving forward.
Absolutely. Man.
Yeah, I think, the running is interesting, but whenever you look through it, there's not really like the drop of fear.
Yeah.
From the whole time, it's complete faith with this is what's going to happen. And in verse 26, it's interesting because they say that, whoever kills Goliath is going to have all these riches and he's going to have riches
Right.
and daughter. And you hear David say, what shall we gather the man to kill this? And he's going to take away the Lord and the arrows of the food. Why is this such a thing that should be?
Yeah.
This is something that should just happen because we have God. The thought of David was never, this is something big that I have to do. The thought of David was, I'm just going to do this because I know that my God will take care of it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's absolutely no doubt in David at all. There was no hesitation. There was no second thoughts. It was quite simply, I have a job to do, and I have to do it now. And he runs toward danger. Is the danger real? Absolutely. Did he give the choice of fear a day? No. He didn't let fear have its day with David.
New Testament talks about elders. Very similar sentences.
Well, in verse 45, David let him know that, didn't he? At the very end, he said, the God of armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied, he's going to take you out, so he definitely let him know this is your last day. So here we get to the exciting part. Verse 48, the Philistine approaches David, runs towards him, and is eager to conquer Goliath. Verse 49 says, and David put his hand in the bag, and took thence a stone, and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone, listen to this, sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. There's two collisions here. The stone hitting Goliath's forehead, which, to not get too technical, but that's the frontal lobe of your brain. That accounts for your decision making. From what I understand, that accounts for your attitude. I could be wrong on that, but it doesn't matter. That went into the front of his head, and I would say it sank. Now, when something sinks, if you drop something in the water and it sinks, it's going in. It's going down. I think that stone went through his skull and into his brain. I don't know that for sure. But it was enough to smite Goliath to his death. Yeah. And I'm just imagining, we have that poster back there of Goliath, and then this one here. That's an 8-foot sheet of plywood that I had to carve out. So that's not to scale, but that's still a pretty big man. It's a big dude. I'm imagining, this is kind of funny too, as big as Goliath is, that's a lot of space of a target. You know, David, I know he was sure of his weapon, but you know, there's a lot of area to hit there on that guy. But he hit the most, I would say, the most crucial part, and that's the center of the forehead. And it just sunk into his head and knocked him dead immediately.
You know, also, to your point, he had a small area he's running at him. Bible says he reaches for his sword. What was the sling? All he's running at him. Captured
Yeah.
his head. Which tells us that when he's up the line of bear, he wasn't pointing his swords.
No.
He clearly was a skilled hunter and was not afraid of anybody.
Yeah.
And as explained before, he was very confident and for good reason.
Yeah.
The stones, as was mentioned before, I think he knew there was holes every single stone all over.
And this blow instantly kills the giant. It's a one shot, one kill. It hits his head, and you know you've probably seen boxing matches or you know cage fights, things like that. Somebody gets clocked just right in the head, they go limp. Their body actually stiffens up, and sometimes they can't move or they're knocked out completely, and they just go straight down. This is the same with Goliath. I think he got hit, all consciousness was gone, and his face hit the ground. Go ahead, Dan. Yeah, is it even a fight? It's like, okay, you're running towards me, I'm running towards you, sling, pop, you're done. Go ahead, Luke.
Verse 46, David tells him, he says, I will smite thee. He didn't say, I'll fight you for a while.
Right.
He didn't say, he didn't even say, I'll fight you.
No.
He said, I'll hit you.
Yeah.
As in, I'm going to hit you once.
Right.
So if Goliath wasn't smart enough to understand what he was saying there, obviously this is what happened. And that just shows the confidence that he had not only in his weapon but in his God. That he was that could have gone any amount of way, right? David could have been running in and someone could have shot an arrow from the army. It could have hit him, right? He didn't even think about that. He was just
He had a job to do, and it was almost prophecy to deliver. It was, this is going to happen.
You know, I said there's a battle here between these two groups. They're going to battle. David, he had his weapon. Goliath, discounted his enemy.
Yeah.
How do I know? Because it says David had pulled the sword out of his sheath. Goliath never knew how to sword. He didn't think David was enough of a threat to even pull his sword out to prepare for battle. He was not prepared. David was prepared. So the way that was said, the lesson for us is always be prepared. Prepare for that battle. You never know. Don't discount David.
100%. And real quick, Russ, we talked about that earlier, right? When he was kind of cursing David to his gods, he underestimated this man. He underestimated God. And all of that all of that pride led to his downfall.
It's interesting to look at there's occasions, examples where God acts. Sometimes he acts in ways where there is absolute innocence, since there's no doubt about those things. But there's absolutely no doubt all there's a person. But in here, he works through David, it's the same way. He works in such a way that a logical person sees a reality that sees the culture of God. David, he didn't just kill him out. Obviously, that's on his head. That is absolutely without doubt. The question lies there. Go on, he he's dead. So it's absolute infallible ability of God's power. And because of David's faith, so it just reminds me of the examples of absolute ways.
Yeah. And there's no like wiggle room for, it might have gone this way, might have gone that way. God said it, David said it, it's done. And we'll finish up here with verse 50 and 51. We'll have a little bit more discussion. It says, So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him, but there was no sword in the hand of David, just like Clee was saying. He didn't have a sword. Where did he find this sword? 51, Therefore David ran and stood upon the Philistine, got on top of him, and took his sword and drew it out of the sheath. That's where it was. David didn't need Saul's sword. David had the proven weapon that he already said he was going to use. And he took the sword from Goliath that was sheathed in his sheath. Now, I'm just going to venture to say, I don't have proof of this either. I think God was with David at this point, picking up the sword, because I bet that was a big sword. And David's a little fella. But he took that sword, and he pulls it out, and cuts off his head. 51. Let's see. Yes, therefore David ran and stood upon the Philistine, took out his sword and drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. They took off. They put all their eggs in that basket for Goliath to conquer the champion, whoever that may be. Their champion was their hope. That's right. And the very sword that Goliath had thought he was going to slay David with was used to behead him. And this, when David took the head of Goliath, that was a symbol. That was a symbol to the enemy saying, I've taken your champion whom I said I would do, and now I'm showing you what just happened, as I said it would. So he's delivering on his promise. That's what David's doing. So slain is the giant Goliath, and what is interesting, I wonder, in David's eyes, who's next? What do I got to do next? This was, I wouldn't say a small task, but it was a job, and he has other thoughts. So we as Christians have obstacles, obviously, in our life at times that may seem giant, or horrific, or large in stature. We may even initially cover or cower in fear because of these giants, obstacles in our lives, not knowing if or how we can overcome them. Now, Romans 3:23 says, For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. That doesn't mean we give up. That doesn't mean we don't have a way out, because we most certainly do. God has given us ample ample opportunities to make things right. And James 1:13 through 15 talks about temptation. We talked about that earlier. Even Christ was tempted in the wilderness by Satan, but he overcame it. And we have that same ability. It's no magic ability. It's no the Spirit coming into us and helping us to overcome. It's the Spirit through the Word of God. We have the direction in the Bible of how to overcome temptation. Some verses that help me sometimes when I'm going through struggles in life. We talked about Philippians 4:13. If we're ever wondering what else to do, we talked about Romans 8:31. For if God be with us, who can be against us? And that's exactly what David was thinking. That's exactly the thought that he had. Is that the last bell, or do we got 5? A few minutes. Okay. A couple other lessons I want to think about here, or verses, is let's go to 1 Peter 5:6 and 7, real quick. Another verse I had here is, what is something that we can do when we're hurting, when we're scared, when we're struggling? James 5:16, the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. God wants us to talk to Him. He wants us to put our concerns and our petitions to Him. And then here it says in 1 Peter 5:6 and 7, it says, humble yourselves therefore under the mighty hand of God, that He may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon Him, for He careth for you. And we have such a loving God. In John 3:16, He loved the world that He gave His only Son, so that we can have and afford that hope of eternal life. Without that, we have no hope, but there is. And God loves us, and God cares about us, and wants us to go towards Him. And He wants us to have the courage in knowing that, to go towards the danger and defeat it. Same as David did with Goliath. We have the ability. We have the tools. They're proven, they're tested, and we can conquer any giant in our life. Thank you very much.